There was a time, in the distant past, before written history was clearly defined, when stories did not travel through books, but through human voices. And one of those stories has survived for thousands of years, the story of a city that burned in the silence of the night. This is the story of Troy. No one knows exactly where myth ends and reality begins, but somewhere near the shores of the Aegean Sea, there once rose a magnificent city, ancient city of Troy, a city with towering walls, grand towers, and people who believed they were safe. Far beyond the seas, another world was watching them, the world of kings, the world of pride, and the world of fragile human choices. It is said that everything began not with war, but with love, or perhaps desire. A prince of Troy, Paris, and a woman unlike any other, Helen of Troy. Some say she was taken, others say she chose to leave. But what matters is this: she did not belong to Troy. She belonged to a king, Menelaus, and when she disappeared, something quiet yet dangerous began to grow. Not anger, not yet, but something deeper, wounded pride and questioned honor. Soon the Greek kings gathered, warriors, legends, names that would echo through time, Achilles and Odysseus. They did not come only for Helen, they came because they could not refuse. And so 1,000 ships cut through the dark waters toward a city that did not yet know it was already lost. The war did not end quickly. It lasted not for days or months, but for years, 10 long years. Imagine that, a war so long that children grew up knowing nothing else, a war where even victories felt empty and losses became ordinary. Inside Troy, life continued. People still walked the streets, still spoke in quiet voices, still hoped that somehow everything would pass. Among them was a prince, Hector, not the strongest, not the fastest, but perhaps the most human. He fought not for glory, but for his home, for his family, for the quiet life that the war was slowly taking away. And across the battlefield stood Achilles, nearly unstoppable, almost something beyond human. And when they met, it was not just a battle, it was something heavier, a collision of two worlds. But Troy did not fall that day, nor the next, because in the end it was not strength that ended the war. It was an idea, a wooden horse, a gift, or at least that is what it seemed. The Greeks were gone, or so it appeared. The battlefield was silent, the sea was empty, and the people of Troy stood before the horse not with fear, but with curiosity. That night the entire city slept. For the first time in years there was no sound of war, only silence. And inside the horse, something was waiting. When the darkness deepened, they emerged. The gates were opened, the army returned, and Troy finally fell. By morning, the great city was no more. Was it real? Was it myth? Or something in between? Perhaps it does not matter, because Troy is not remembered for how it stood, but for how it was lost, and in the silence of the night, its story still lives on. The days passed over the ashes of Troy, yet the silence remained. The wind whispered through the burnt stones, carrying echoes of a life that once was. In streets where laughter once rose, now there was only emptiness, and that emptiness felt heavier than the war itself. Because some wars, even when won, leave behind only loss. And for those who survived, the real story was only just beginning. The few who remained wandered among the ruined walls, as if they had lost not only their homes, but who they once were. The fire had died, but the memories were still warm. And sometimes the hardest thing is not to survive, but to keep living. Far away upon the sea, the Greek ships slowly made their return. Victory had been achieved, yet no one truly celebrated, because every warrior remembered something they had left behind, a friend, a brother, or the person they once were. Even Odysseus had grown quiet after the victory, for he knew that some victories do not make the journey home easier, but far more difficult. His journey was not over. In truth, perhaps it would never be. And the fall of Troy was not only the end of a city, but the beginning of new stories. Those who were scattered set out toward different lands. Some tried to forget the past, while others carried it with them. This is how legends are born, from silent pain, from untold stories, and from memories that long to be remembered. Years passed, generations changed, yet Troy was not forgotten. Because some stories do not fade with time, they grow deeper. People continued to tell this story by the fire, in whispers, in the quietest and most desolate moments of the night. Perhaps that is why even today, when we think of Troy, we do not see only a war, we see a choice, a mistake, a pride, and an inevitable end. And perhaps the most intriguing part is this. For a long time, whether Troy truly existed was debated and even became the subject of films, until centuries later, something began to emerge from beneath the earth. A man named Heinrich Schliemann believed these ancient stories were not merely myths, and he began to dig, layer by layer, moving deeper into time, until he uncovered traces of the very city once told in stories. But what was found was not only stones, it was the silent evidence of a story that may have truly been lived. And this only deepened the question, was Troy merely a myth, or a reality people chose to remember? Perhaps the answer lies somewhere in between, because some stories are more powerful than truth itself, and people tell them not only because they are true, but because of how they make us feel. Now, as the night grows quiet once more, and the world slowly drifts into sleep, the story of Troy begins to fade again. But it does not disappear. It simply waits for the next listener, the next voice, the next night. And perhaps at this very moment, you who are listening have become a part of it, because some stories continue to live as long as they are told, and Troy is still alive. Although the story of Troy may seem to end here, it actually only changes direction, because the fall of a city is often the beginning of other journeys. That night, some of those who survived quietly slipped away into the darkness, without looking back, or perhaps taking one last glance, leaving behind ruined walls, extinguished fires, and the lives they once knew. They walked toward the sea. Among them were the elderly, the ones who remembered everything, the young who were only beginning to understand that nothing would ever be the same again, and the children who could not fully grasp what had happened, yet would never forget that silence. For them, Troy would no longer be a place, but a memory. Some boarded small boats, others continued walking along the shore. Some went north, others south, but all of them carried the same thing, an invisible weight, the burden of a world they had lost. Among those journeys, one name would slowly rise above the others, not just a warrior, but a bearer, someone who carried the past into the future. His name was Aeneas. His story begins quietly, walking through flames, carrying his aging father on his shoulders, and holding the hand of a small child. This image is not only an escape, it is a continuation, because some people do not simply survive, they carry a story with them. For Aeneas, the road was long and uncertain. The seas were not calm, the nights were not peaceful. Yet he did not stop, because what he left behind was not only a city, it was an identity, and to not lose it completely, he had to keep moving forward. As time passed, those who remained from Troy spread across different lands. Each of them carried small pieces with them, a language, a habit, a story, and perhaps that is why Troy was never truly lost. It simply scattered. There are stories that do not live in one place. They live within people. They change as they are told, but their essence remains. Troy became something like that, More than a city, a lesson, a warning, and sometimes a quiet comfort. Meanwhile, on the other side of the war, silence had also settled. The Greek world slowly turned inward after its victory, but that victory did not bring the peace they expected, because even when a war ends, the echoes within a person do not fade so easily. For Odysseus, the return would become the longest journey of all. Years at sea, being lost, taking wrong turns, and having to begin again each time. Reaching home can sometimes be harder than setting out, and his story, in truth, begins after Troy. There were others as well, warriors who returned home but were no longer the same, those who grew quiet, those who woke in the night, those who, when they closed their eyes, still saw the battlefield, because some moments never truly leave a person. Years later, these stories continued to be told, but in different forms. Poets turned them into verses. Storytellers rebuilt them by the fire. With each telling, small details changed, but the emotions remained the same. Loss, pride, choices. Why did people continue to tell this story? Perhaps to see themselves in it, because Troy was not just an event of the past, it was a reflection of human nature. A sense of safety, no matter how strong, can be broken. Pride can lead to the greatest mistakes, and sometimes the greatest destructions begin with the smallest choices. But at the same time, this story shows something else: the resilience of people, the ability to begin again, even after losing everything, to keep moving forward. As the night deepens, the world grows quieter, and in that silence, the stories of the past can be heard more clearly. The story of Troy is like that. After a loud war comes a deep stillness. Perhaps that is why this story is told before sleep, because it does not only tell of a war, it also tells of the calm that comes after an ending. And within that calm, a person draws closer to themselves. Now you can simply listen without thinking. The story no longer needs to reach a destination, because some stories are not told for an ending, but for a feeling. And the feeling Troy leaves behind slowly spreads. Calm, heavy, yet lasting. Then, as the night grows deeper, the world begins to soften. The sharp edges of thought slowly fade, and what remains is quieter, slower, more distant. And in that quiet space, the story continues, not as a tale of war, but as a memory that drifts gently through time. Somewhere far away, long after the fall of Troy, a small fire burns in the darkness. Around it, a few travelers sit in silence. No one speaks at first. The flames move slowly, rising and falling like a breath. And then, without urgency, one voice begins to tell a story. Not loudly, not dramatically, but softly, as if the night itself is listening. It is the same story, but it feels different now. The anger is gone. The noise is gone. What remains is something calmer, something that no longer seeks to explain, only to be felt. One of the listeners closes their eyes, not to sleep yet, but to see more clearly. Because sometimes when the eyes are closed, the mind becomes quieter, and in that quiet, images begin to form. Not sharp, not precise, but soft, like distant memories. A shoreline appears, gentle waves touching the sand, the sky dark yet peaceful. No ships now, no armies, only the sound of water moving endlessly forward and back, as if time itself is breathing. And somewhere along that shore, footprints fade slowly into the sand, not because they were erased, but because everything in its own time returns to stillness. The voice continues, steady, unhurried, speaking not to inform, but to accompany, because in moments like this, a story is not something you follow, it is something that walks beside you. The fire grows softer, the night grows deeper, and the distance between past and present becomes thinner, almost disappearing. You begin to notice your breath, slow, natural, effortless, rising and falling, just like the sea, just like the flame, just like the rhythm of the story itself. There is nothing you need to do, nowhere you need to go. The story is no longer moving forward, it is simply resting. And in that rest, something gentle begins to settle inside you, a quiet understanding that not everything needs to be resolved. Not every story needs a clear ending. Some things are meant to remain soft, open, unfinished, because it is in that space that the mind can finally let go. The voice becomes even softer now, almost a whisper, not fading, just becoming lighter. The fire is nearly gone, only a few glowing embers remain, and above, the sky stretches endlessly, filled with distant stars. Each star quiet, each moment passing, each thought slowly drifting away. And as you listen, you may begin to feel it, that gentle pull towards sleep. Not sudden, not forced, just natural, like closing a door quietly behind you and stepping into a softer place. The story does not end here. It simply becomes silent. And in that silence, you can rest. As that silence settles more deeply, the world feels even farther away, not gone, just softened, like a distant memory that no longer asks for attention. The night continues to unfold in its own quiet rhythm. Nothing rushes, nothing demands. Everything simply exists. The fire, now almost gone, lets out a final, gentle glow. The warmth still lingers in the air, wrapping around you like a calm presence. Not strong, not overwhelming, just enough to remind you that you are safe and at ease. Somewhere in the distance, a faint breeze moves through unseen trees. You cannot see them, but you can almost hear the leaves shifting softly, brushing against one another. A quiet, natural sound, repeating, steady, comforting. And the voice, still there, still calm, continues without effort, not leading you anywhere, not asking anything from you, simply staying with you as the night grows deeper. If you notice your thoughts gently moving, that's okay. There is no need to stop them. Just let them pass slowly, like clouds drifting across a dark sky. They come and they go without needing to be held onto. The story now is no longer about Troy or distant lands or ancient names. It has become something else, something quieter. It has become a space where you can simply be. Your breathing slows even more now. You might not even notice it at first, but it is there, steady, natural, effortless. Each breath slightly deeper than the last, each exhale a little longer, as if your body is gently letting go of everything it no longer needs. There is nothing left to carry, no walls to defend, no battles to fight, no decisions to make, only this moment, only this quiet. And as you remain here, You may begin to feel a gentle heaviness, not uncomfortable, not restrictive, but soft, like sinking slowly into something warm and supportive. Your shoulders relax, your jaw loosens, your thoughts grow quieter. Even the voice begins to slow just slightly more, leaving a little more space between each word, each sentence, allowing you to drift at your own pace. Somewhere far away, the sea still moves, endless, calm, repeating its quiet rhythm, wave after wave touching the shore, then retreating again, never rushing, never stopping. And without realizing it, your breathing begins to follow that same pattern, in and out, slow and steady. The world outside no longer matters, not for now. It can wait, everything can wait, because this moment is yours, a moment without pressure, a moment without noise, a moment where nothing is expected from you. And as the night holds you gently, the last remaining thoughts begin to fade even more. They no longer form clearly. They become softer, quieter, until they are barely there at all. The voice is now almost a whisper, carried gently through the silence, just enough to remind you that you are not alone, but free to rest. The darkness around you is not empty. It is calm. It is peaceful. It is a place where everything can slow down and settle exactly as it should. And now there is nothing left to follow, nothing left to understand, only this quiet, gentle drifting as sleep comes closer, slowly, softly, naturally, until even the story fades away. And even as the story fades, something gentle remains. Not words, not images, just a quiet presence, like a soft echo that lingers without asking to be noticed. The night continues steady and calm, holding everything exactly where it is meant to be. There is no need to move, no need to think, no need to hold on to anything at all. Your breathing continues its slow rhythm, in and out, effortless and natural, like the tide moving along a distant shore. Each breath carries you a little deeper into stillness, a little further away from the noise of the day. The air feels softer now. The space around you feels wider, quieter, more distant, as if the world itself has taken a step back, allowing you this moment of rest. If a thought appears, let it pass. If a feeling comes, let it settle. There is nothing here that needs to be changed. Everything is already enough. The voice is barely there now, just a soft guide in the background, fading gently with each passing moment. Not disappearing, just becoming lighter, quieter, until it almost blends into the silence itself. Somewhere far beyond awareness, time continues, but here it slows, it stretches, it softens. You may feel yourself drifting now, not falling, not sinking, just gently floating, supported, calm, at ease. There is no beginning here, no end, only this quiet space where everything can rest. And as you stay in this stillness, sleep comes closer, not suddenly, not forcefully, but like a quiet invitation, soft, steady, inevitable. The night holds you gently, and without even noticing, you let go.